For more on the Chauvin verdict, we bring in attorney Lance Lorusso, who's represented dozens of police officers, including a former Atlanta police officer who shot Rayshard Brooks last summer. Thank you so much for joining us again, Mr. Lorusso. Been asking everybody the same question, your reaction to this verdict.
You know, it doesn't surprise me that there was a verdict of guilty, and I think that the second-degree manslaughter was pretty much a given from some of the early testimony. The other two, I think, were developed. I think in large part the jury found extremely dispositive the fact that there was no treatment after George Floyd went limp. And, you know, I'm finding it very hard to believe, and listening to all these people talk about this as an example of systemic racism, when law enforcement has been condemning this situation roundly since the video came out. So I think that, you know, we need to take a step back and realize this is not the time to defund law enforcement. It's not the time to reduce the amount of training. We need to find out why this happened in this specific department and recognize this man obviously was an outlier.
And some have said that America was on trial in this case, while others, including the prosecutor himself, said that this case was solely about one man, Derek Chauvin, and not about policing. Do you feel that this trial ended up being bigger than just Derek Chauvin?
No, I think the prosecutors recognize when you're going to call people like Chief Arando and you're going to call Investigator Blackwell and other amazing law enforcement officers who work in Minneapolis, and you're going to put them in front of a jury so they can see the professionalism and compassion they have, you can't indict the entire law enforcement department. And I think that it's the same with law enforcement across the United States. Thousands, tens of thousands of law enforcement officers perform their jobs admirably, professionally, and compassionately every day.
In law, there's often talk of precedent. You defend police officers in court. Do you think that this case could make your job more difficult or have any impact at all on future cases against police officers?
No, I don't. I think that when we look at these situations and we hear, you know, the thin blue line and the blue wall of silence, I see people coming out and testifying, my clients testifying against bad police officers all the time. And, you know, this is a Hollywood-driven notion that law enforcement never testifies or never gets rid of bad law enforcement officers. I think juries listen to evidence. I think the juries listen to the evidence, they watch the video, and they said there was no excuse for any use of force, especially when George Floyd went limp. And at that point, they decided, I think correctly, that this was completely inappropriate. And I don't know a single law enforcement officer who has supported what Derek Chauvin did.
Is there anything that you think or that you hope will come out of this landmark trial?
I think one of the things we need to look at is to stop this rush to fire law enforcement officers immediately before you get to do an investigation. There is a case, Garrity versus New Jersey, where law enforcement agencies can force an officer to answer questions. And I still have questions watching that video. Where in the world did Derek Chauvin decide to do that? Where did he learn it? And we heard it wasn't taught in the academy. It wasn't taught by anyone in his department. But we lost the opportunity to make that department better and learn more about where that maneuver came from and where his decisions came from, because there was a rush to terminate him immediately. Even if he's going to be charged later, we lost that opportunity.
And lastly, you've been in Eric Nelson's shoes in that you represent police officers. How well would you say that he argued Derek Chauvin's case, and would you say that a guilty verdict was inevitable given the facts?
I think the second-degree manslaughter was probably the toughest thing for him to combat, and I was not surprised at all when they convicted based on that. I think he was trying to do what he's constitutionally required to do, is to try to raise a reasonable doubt, and as Sandra Day O'Connor said, test the evidence in the crucible of justice. I think he was, you know, recognizing his client came in with a presumption of innocence, and there was going to be a lot of evidence that came forward, and the prosecution did an excellent job of constantly hitting the fact that the force at some point was no longer justifiable in any way whatsoever.
Lance Lorusso, appreciate your insight and your time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.